I want to welcome you on behalf of the Public Engagement Committee of the County Transition Process. My name is Randy McShepard, and I guess in my spare time I work for a company called RPM International Incorporated, which is a worldwide chemical coatings company based in Medina. But I certainly am spending a lot of time these days with colleagues trying to initiate a meaningful process as it relates to engaging the public about the county transition process. So at this time, I want to recognize my co-chair representing Cuyahoga County, Mary Denahan. And I'd like to ask all the members of the Public Engagement Committee to stand. They've been just fantastic to work with these last several months. Yes. Thank you all. And my responsibility is to prime the pump a bit, just to give you a little background information about the public engagement process. And then we have two very informative presentations that will follow, and then we'll open this up for questions and answers. So with that, why don't we jump into this? This is, it says tonight's forum. We're not going to keep you that long, I promise. But, yeah. We want to, again, talk about the purpose of today, which I pretty much just covered. But we'll have the Transition Advisory Group, or TAG for short, present first. And then we'll have Finance and Administration talk about the work that they've done to date. We'll then open it up for discussion and public input, and wrap it up and have you well on your way. So we like to always put this in perspective. We firmly believe that what we are embarking upon is one of the grandest civic education projects of our lifetime. I like to say it's only every 200 years that we reform county government. Based on that, it's critically important, we believe, that every citizen of the county take the time to learn about this process and to get engaged in the process. The purpose, what we hope to accomplish as we coordinate these forums, and we have done several of these already across the county, we want to educate you on the status of the county transition process. A lot is happening on a daily basis. I think we're getting very close to 300 public meetings that have taken place with all the committees and 11 committees and subcommittees, and so it's quite an involved process, which I think is great for the sake of the county and its future. We certainly want to entertain questions and comments from the audience, and that's not just for the sake of having a conversation amongst us, but we believe that it's important that we take any recommendations that you may offer to us back to the respective committees. Clearly, our two presenters want to hear what you have to say about their work, and they can take it back to their committees. That's what we think community engagement is all about. Going in the wrong direction. We like to point out that we have not only had some exciting forums, but we have others coming up soon. You see, August 10th would be our next forum, which is the African American Public Forum. That's the NAACP, the Urban League, and United Pastors and Mission all came together. That will take place at Mount Sinai Baptist Church. We then will go to Westlake Public Library, August 19th. August 26th, we're going to have a Hispanic forum on the near west side. And then I guess our last forum will be, I'm getting a little teary, Mary, September 13th, Cleveland Stokes Library downtown. That will be exciting, not only because it's the last forum, but because among other presentations, we'll actually have the executive committee kind of talk about all that has happened and what comes next from the executive committee perspective, who will be working for the subsequent months to kind of tweak and fine-tune all of the information that we would have learned and handing that over to the TAG for final approval. So I do believe it is time for me to sit down and to allow our illustrious guests to come forth and share with us. So first up is Gary Holland, who's representing the Transition Advisory Group. He can tell you what that is and his role. He plays a very important role being a member of the TAG. And is this your presentation that I'm on here? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Gary Holland.
Thank you, Randy, very much. I appreciate all the hard work that you have been doing. And you're here with your original cast again, I see. Hey, I'm going to the Improv tonight. I was telling my, we have two members from the ISC who are videographers, and I was telling them about a presentation I did yesterday for an advocacy group to talk about health and human services and the role of this process and the transition advisory group. And I had indicated to them after my introduction, my service had been with the White administration here in Cleveland. I was in Columbus working with the state, went back down to Columbus to work for Mayor Coleman and also emergency management. So I've been doing the I-71 shuffle for about 10 years. And so before I started my presentation, I said to them that I've made a decision. I'm going to take my talents back to Columbus. Thank you. So this group is alive and well this morning, but it went over like a lead balloon yesterday afternoon after the pizza, so I won't do that. You'll be the last ones I experiment with on that one. My part of the program is really quite minimal because my colleague Robin Thomas, who is co-chairing with, is it Rick Farron? The Finance and Administration Work Group has done most of the work on this, and I kind of poke my head in on the subcommittee meetings all throughout the process, not just with Finance and Administration, but what I'll show you momentarily, the other work groups. I know most of you have seen most of this before. I always like to kind of refresh where we are, because somehow some people just don't get it right when they leave here, and you're talking with them in the hallway, it was as if you didn't say what you said. So if you would bear with me just momentarily, I'll try to move this along. And I'm supposed to point this at something, I think. What am I pointing at? Oh, there it is. They hid it from me. You've seen this before, probably at the very beginning, and then also once we have gone to other public engagement forums. But what this is showing you is the structure of our process. It talks about the Transition Advisory Group, which in the charter is under 1307. The county commissioners last year appointed myself, the county administrator, Jim McCafferty, and Joe Nani, who was the director of the Office of Human Resources, as the three-member tag. We're supposed to be the senior executive officials that basically provide a seamless transfer of power to the new government that the citizens have indicated they wanted. As you can determine, the Transition Executive Committee is a private body that is sponsoring these forums through our public engagement work group, but those individuals are influential members of the private sector and also the county government, and they will in turn get the reports, the recommendations that roll up after September the 3rd. And once that occurs, they will spend time reviewing, talking to the county co-chairs, the work group co-chairs, and then making a determination as to whether or not there needs to be refinement, clarification, amplification, and then that is then passed on to the three of us to finalize, add to, and we won't subtract from, because this has been a bottom-up kind of process, but we want to make sure that what we turn over after the November the 2nd election, the general election, is refined and is intelligible and is centered on best practices, because one of the charges is to provide efficiency in our operations, to find additional dollars that will support the basic principle of the charter, and that is to encourage economic development, and however it's defined, whether it's big box, large scale projects or entrepreneurship and small business support. We need the money to be able to do that, so the citizens in what they voted for really are pursuing this economic development component. But as you notice, the county government collaboration will consist primarily of elected officials who have been talking about regionalization, sharing, service delivery. How can we make this region more robust and productive? So those discussions take place there. And as Randy had indicated, as one of the members of the executive committee, as well as one of the co-chairs for our public engagement work group, there will be a lot of discussion that goes up to that transition executive committee. And then you can see the 10 functional work groups What happened in the very beginning when we were having discussion with the Issue 6 reformers, which became the new Cuyahoga now, was we want you to understand how complex and wide is our responsibility in county government. So what ended up happening was this segmentation of functions, and these captions here, the names of the work groups, really talk about what it is that county government does. And I won't read them all, but what I want to bring your attention to is the one that I highlighted, Finance Administration. And I think you'll be not only pleased with Robin's presentation, but the extent of the work that her group has to do. And in fact, I'll make some small reference to how she's structured, but she'll go into more detail during her presentation. Oops, gone too far. Yep, there we go. My reference just now, you can see that Robin had to work with Rick Farron over these 9 subcommittees, and they're fairly intricate, everything from internal audits to investment in bonds, anything having to do with money, fiscal transactions, financial transactions, from the Treasurer's Office that is now a row agency, an elected official, but will be an appointed official, to the auditor, who will be an appointed official, and as, of course, you are aware that the sheriff and the county coroner, which will be the medical examiner, will also be appointed by the county executive. So I think Robin will give you more specification and the progress report on what these subcommittees are doing. This thing is really like going crazy. There we go. What I wanted to really spend most of my time with was this schedule, and most of my time means a couple of minutes. Again, I tried to highlight what I saw as important milestones. On the 14th, the Transition Advisory Group sponsored an all-candidate briefing. The premise there was, and this was on the 14th, was that we needed to have informed candidates, not those just simply make promises or articulate what they think needs to happen, but they need to know, based on reality and what is available to them in terms of resources, how to fashion their platforms, how to inform the public of what it is they want to do in sharing their vision once they take office after the election and on January 1st. So that took place, and the candidates were all given time to talk about their vision, what they want to see happen in a number of different areas. And then the Department of Development just last week had an economic development focus, and again, the public got an opportunity to hear a very focused, horned presentation from 10 of the candidates. The work groups will finish their recommendations, finalize their recommendations with the help of a consultant, the Public Financial Management, PFM, you may have heard about as well as seen on our website. They will ensure uniformity of presentation, will provide any kind of additional research that the work groups who may or may not have had subject matter experts working with them would have be able to use them as a resource. So on the 3rd, and this actually should be, I'm sorry, a misprint. This should be September the 3rd, because I know I scared you, didn't it, Robin? If you thought it had to be done next week. But no, this should be September the 3rd, where those recommendations then again roll up to the Executive Committee for review. We'll have the primary, and then somewhere around the end of September, Jim, Joe, and I want to have a post-primary candidate information session. We'll have a smaller field to present more detailed information to. There were a lot of questions about the budget, about significant milestone projects that the county is involved in, everything from well-known like the Medical Mart and some of the economic development programs, as well as some of the departmental initiatives that it was difficult to share with 125 people at one time. So we'll kind of hone in and filter, you know, the highlights of so that the candidates, as they go into the general election, will be able to understand even more so what they'll inherit once they take office in January. Then we'll have on the 30th the executive committee would have had their review, finalize that, and then approve, and that would be transparent, a public meeting, those recommendations that are presented to them. And then they turn those over to Joe, Jim, and I, the Transition Advisory Group, and we have a little more than a month to go through those, and again, as I said, to perfect them, to provide additional information if additional information is required, and so forth. General election hits, and then right after that, the day after that, we will offer those recommendations to the 12 people that are elected, the county executive and the 11 members of the county council. And hopefully we'll engage in a short-term dialogue. I suspect that we'll be working especially with the county executive, a transition team that he or she may have put together for the purpose of moving in and assuming that office in January. And then finally, we'll have a series of workshops for those 12 people so that as we keep moving and honing in and then getting to the real, as they say, the nitty-gritty, those 12 people will come in prepared, not wondering what's going on. They'll have as much information as those of us who have been working in county government in whatever role would have. And then after that is concluded, then you can see January 1, the people will clearly have spoken, and those people will take their offices and take over the government and have the authority to shape policy and move this county ahead. And then we would hope that what we have prepared for day one and a listing of recommendations for 30, 60, 90 days, and even what we call parking lot issues that will take a longer period of time to implement, that will become at least a blueprint that they'll see as options for their governance. So that kind of puts us through the whole calendar, and whether or not the Transition Advisory Group will exist, I don't want to say technically, because the charter doesn't say it ends that day. It doesn't define that. But if the county executive and the county council would want us to continue our work, then we would be glad to do so. Otherwise, I'll resume my role as Director of Justice Affairs. Jim and Joe will figure out what they have to do because there won't be a county administrator. That's being replaced as well by the county executive. And Joe will either return to the new Department of Human Resources and work with the Commission of Human Resources provided for in the charter, or he'll find some other role either inside or outside of government. So as far as the three of us are concerned, you flip a coin and we aren't sure where we'll end up, but my hope is that since my background is in public service and public administration, that I'll continue to serve the people of Cuyahoga County in some capacity. And boy, this thing, either my fingers are very slow or, there we go. There it is again. I hate doing this. Next time I have you do it, Mary, you can flip it for me. And again, I like to just bring your attention to areas where if you want information and you can't reach us or you can't attend these meetings, this is being videotaped and will, in a matter of several days, appear on the county, the charter.cuyahogacounty.us website, through our YouTube. You can also find this on Facebook, and we also have a communications news organ that the Public Engagement Group provided through a Twitter account. So without that, Randy, I don't have much more to say. I think, as I said, Robin has the task this day of presenting most of the important information. Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And he'll be back for questions. As Robin comes up, I'll just say I have not yet met Robin in any formal way, but Robin, boy, have I heard your name a lot over the last few months. I know you've done just a wonderful job of moving this. I think one of the more difficult, pieces of our work in terms of reforming government, finance and administration, and she'll get into detail about that. But welcome, and let me just give you a quick crash course. Gently press the forward button, and that'll move your slides forward, and that's backwards. And here's a microphone.
Okay. I see what part of the problem could be. If you're holding the mic in your right hand, which I'm not at the moment, you'd be using this with your left hand, and there's no way I can adjust anything left-handed. So let me start with when we were given our assignments. My co-chair is Rick Farron from Eaton Company, and he's having a far more exciting morning than I am because he's on safari. So he got safari, and I got to come to this presentation. Basically, when we put our committee together, we're looking at the administration building. It's that building on the corner of Lakeside and Ontario, and most of our scope are the offices and the people within that building. So let me go ahead and look at what our charter was, or the county charter will eliminate most of the offices in that building. It'll eliminate the voted treasurer, the auditor, the recorder, and the clerk of courts. And then that will be replaced by an appointed treasurer and an appointed fiscal officer. Now that fiscal officer will have the duties of the current auditor, current recorder, and then a portion of what the clerk of courts is doing. And then the treasurer will be appointed, and his or her role will be somewhat similar to what they're doing now. One of our charges was to review all the existing operations of the treasurer, auditor, recorder, Office of Budget and Management, which currently falls under the county commissioners, and the non-judicial side of the clerk of courts. For those of you who aren't aware, the clerk of courts, on one hand, deals with the recording of documents from the judicial system. On the other side, they issue car titles and boat titles. So we're looking at the car and boat side of the county clerk of courts office. Our other charge was to recommend an organizational and operational structure for the offices so that the appointed officials can fulfill their duties of those offices. And then any other recommendations that are related to best practices for the different operations of the fiscal administration system. Okay. Our approach, rather than to look at the different offices that were involved, was to look at functional areas. Okay. And we felt that those recommendations would better help the new appointed officials to understand their areas of responsibility. Okay. As Gary showed you before, we have 9 subcommittees, and each of these is a functional area in finance and administration. So I'm going to get into a little more detail about what each of those subcommittees took a look at. Okay. Investments and financing. We asked them to recommend an appropriate structure for the Investment Advisory Committee and their working group. We asked them to review and evaluate the county investment portfolio and outstanding bonds, and to recommend statutory changes to provide additional investment opportunities. Now, one thing we found is when we brought in private sector people to chair each of these subcommittees, many of them came in with the thought that, wow, this is the opportunity for change. We're going to come in and make a lot of recommendations, and we're going to change this county and their practices. Our chair of the Investment and Financing Subcommittee found that most of the practices that we were using right now were excellent, that the return on investment was an excellent one, keeping in mind the liquidity and the safety of principal that is required of the county office. And they found that there really was not room for a lot of changes. But still, they went through each option and made a few recommendations that are going to tweak the system. But one thing I was proud of is that they found that the existing structure really was an excellent one. Okay. Our financial accounting subcommittee was going to research best practices in financial shared services. They were going to find ways to reduce paper and utilize more electronic systems within the accounting department, and to recommend efficiencies that would help to save some of the money that the charter is looking for. Okay. Our internal audit committee really had their hands full. There currently is no internal audit department within the county, so they were starting from scratch. They needed to look at what the charter said about having an internal audit committee and appointing a director of internal audit, but none of the processes were suggested by the charter. So they drafted a full outline, they put together manuals, they put together their recommendations for the size of the department. Again, they started from scratch and came up with an excellent document on what that internal audit department should look like. Board of Revision was one of the areas that we looked at. The group came together and suggested qualifications of those board members. The board members will be appointed, one by the county executive and two by the county council. And the charter states that those two appointed by the county council must be of different political parties. But in addition to simply being a voter and the party of that representative, we wanted to define some basic skill sets that those board members would have, since it's their responsibility to revise and approve property values for the county. Any citizen who is not happy with the value that the county auditor has placed on their property, anyone who feels their home has been undervalued or overvalued, normally overvalued, will come before the board and make their case, and the board has the authority to change that value for tax purposes. We asked that subcommittee to design a board structure that'll best utilize the members and their support staff, and to improve the document flow within the board to give people a quicker turnaround on their complaints. Okay. The Budget Committee. Okay, this is one of the primary subcommittees we have, and really one of the most important, because they'll be determining and recommending ways that the county can establish their budget. Okay, they're been asked to review the historic processes for determining departmental budgets, identify improvements to the process that can drive efficiency and effectiveness, and then to suggest some alternative methods for evaluating need and performance for budgeting purposes. Okay. The administration and finance section has tons of paper and tons of records. So one of our committees was Records and Licenses, who are looking to consolidate various records maintained by the county. Some examples are deeds, hundreds of thousands of deeds that have been recorded over probably the last 50 to 75 years are on record at the county. We now have the auto titles and the boat titles. We have documents for hotel motel tax, dog licenses, cigarette licenses. There are more records and documents in the county that you could possibly imagine. And what we needed to do was ask that committee to look at how to link some of those documents together, look at possibly a system that would store them in the same place and make them more accessible to the public, and look at some of the processes by how that document came into the system and what ways can things be made more efficient. Tax collection. The county treasurer is responsible for tax collection within the county. All of you get a real estate tax bill, so you understand that process. But there are a number of other taxes that are collected. Hotel motel tax, for example. There are personal property taxes have been eliminated, but there are still outstanding taxes that need to be collected. There are, let me try and think of manufactured homes. There are real taxes that look like real estate taxes for those homes, but it's handled in a separate structure. So there are a number of different taxes that need to be collected, and we're looking for that committee to help come up with some of the most efficient ways to do that. Financial reporting. We know that the new county council and the new county executive are going to need very in-depth but yet concise reports to do their work. So this committee was looking at dozens of other cities and counties, the type of reports that they provide on a annual, semi-annual, monthly, quarterly, all of the different types of reports they put together, and recommending what would be most useful for our new county executive and our new county council. Okay, Gary's problem is coming up. Property valuation is the final. Many of you are aware that the county auditor currently values all property within the county for tax purposes. So that is a large task that's going to face the new fiscal officer. We asked that committee to present an organizational plan for the auditor, for the assessor's office. How are we going to maintain property records, guidelines for the different appraisal cycles, the sexennial full reappraisal and the triennial update, and then suggest improvements for making those records more accessible to the public. Now this you can't read, but if you look at the back of your notes, I printed off in a plain form rather than a slide. What Gary had talked about was what tasks does the new, does the new county executive and the new county council need to look at before they could take office, those first few days, and then further on down the line. And this is what our group came up with. And I think it'll point out that many of these tasks are not going to happen the first day a new county executive and county council come into play. For example, budget. We are recommending that before they take office, they're going to review the 2011 budget, which will already be in place as they take office January 1st. Spending time reviewing that, and then the first budget that truly they will be developing, possibly from scratch, will be the 2012 budget. So after 90 days within office, they should begin forming what they view as a budget for 2012. Okay. It would be totally impossible for them to come into office on January 1st, 2011 and develop a budget. Without a budget and without appropriations, no one is going to get paid. None of the human services are going to have funds to operate. So that 2011 budget will need to be in place before the new government comes in. Okay. As that new government comes in, tax collection will be underway. Tax collection starts in December and closes in January. So that's an area that will continue on, and the new executive and council will have to determine at what point they want to make any changes, if any. But they're not going to, it would be unwise for them to come in and stop midstream a tax collection cycle when those schools and cities and libraries are counting on that revenue for their operations for the year. This gives an example of all of the different items we've looked at. Internal audit, as you can see, there's a little bit of time before that county executive needs to be appointing and setting up that department. They don't need to start January 1st, but within the first few months, the county executive and council will need to make some decisions for getting that department into operation. Again, this is the back page of your handout. We'll show this not in more detail, but at least in a readable fashion. A few of the recommendations we've come up with so far, and we're still working on recommendations, but totally out of sequence. The Property Valuation Committee was asked to review the request for proposal for the 2012 reappraisal. While 2012 seems a way off, the work for that reappraisal needs to be starting fairly soon, and property values determined that will be effective as of January 1st, 2012. So the subcommittee was asked to review the request for proposal, and the request was, the RFP covered scope, actually, let me think of the best way to phrase this, having an outside company or outside companies do the entire reappraisal and maintain all of the property values. What the subcommittee came up with was this is something that could be done in-house, hiring contract appraisers who will come in and work as an outside contractor for the county, but having the current department and the current staff be the management structure of the reappraisal. And we felt that they had the skills to do that with some assistance. And that would save the county over $7 million by doing an internal reappraisal rather than an external one. Now, before people get too excited saying, wow, that's $7 million we can use for development, that is a fund that is limited to being used only for reappraisals. And if that money is not utilized, it goes back to the cities and schools. So they're the ones who will be a little happier about it than the county general fund. They also made several recommendations for scanning of documents that would allow the public much better access to those documents. The committees or the work group has recommended that all financial and administrative functions report to the fiscal officer, including the new appointed treasurer. Okay. This would have an organizational structure much closer to that in the private sector than in a normal public sector. As I said before, the internal audit department procedures manual has been constructed. There's been a recommendation that Board of Revision staff and hearing officers report to the board administrator rather than report to their different appointing authorities. And it was found that the current financial reporting was very good, that some adjustments should be made to have that reporting on a monthly basis, but that the basic structure of the reports were very good. Okay. And the last few recommendations we've had is to standardize accounting and payroll systems, and each or many of the different departments of the county have their own accounting structures. There is one basic payroll office, but many of them have different methods of getting information into that payment system. So we're looking for having a uniform system throughout the county. And lastly, over the last several months, the county recorder's office and the county auditor's office have been reviewed by the Secretary of State's office or the State Treasurer's office, and there have been audit reviews that have been made public. One has been public for several months. From what I understand, the county auditors will be released in next week or the week that follows, and we're going to put those in as recommendations for the new government, that they should look at that state audit. Okay. We're now to the question and comments portion of our speech. Gary and I will both be available to answer any questions you may have, and we'll go from there.
About our ground rules, and I'll pick up the microphone. Wanted to talk about our ground rules before we go into our questions and answers. We certainly would welcome all of you to share your comments and your thoughts. We would ask that you start out by stating your name before commenting. If you are a candidate for office, we would ask that you share that as well. We're asking also that you take no more than 2 minutes to state your question. And we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak at least once before we start with a second round of questions or comments. We ask that you focus your comments or your questions more so on the work of the TAG, as Gary talked about, or the Finance and Administration Work Group that Robin talked about, as opposed to a general kind of a thing. I think Gary could cover some general, but we really don't expect to challenge them with answering questions about other work groups. That's why we have different work groups come to these sessions, so please be mindful of that. And also, we would ask that you watch out for the timekeeper, Dr. Jeff Brutney here. When you have 30 seconds or so left, he will certainly wave at you and let you know that time is not your friend. So the one other thing I would like to ask at this point is that if you don't have an exit survey, if you would wave your hand, we can have someone bring one to you, because it is very, very important that we hear from you. We want to know, and it's a very basic one-page survey instrument. It's not complicated at all. Really, you're checking off, you know, how we've done in some of the critical categories, and there's certainly room for comments. But it really helps us to do a better job of, you know, facilitating these forums if we know what we're doing well, what we could do better. We take this feedback very seriously. It has helped us to improve the forums, you know, as we've moved ahead with this. So at the end of the session, there will be boxes that we would ask you to drop those in on your way out. So please just take a moment to complete that. So with that, I will hand the mic over to my esteemed colleagues, and I would ask, I guess we could have Gary run. Those of you that remember the Phil Donahue show, Gary will have to kind of serve that role, because it's important that for recording purposes that we hear the question from the audience and then we hear the response from our panelists. So if you would simply raise your hands, we would certainly have the microphone brought to you. And if you are uncomfortable stating a question and would rather write it and have me read it, I'm more than happy to do that. Mr. Shanes would be happy to drop off a card, so just wave at him. So I think we've covered all of our housekeeping. Gary, here you are. First question or comment?
Thank you. My name is Frank Scala, and my question is, did the Transition Advisory Group look at the the number of employees working with the county today and make some assessment as to whether that's the proper fit for the upcoming tasks that you're recommending. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you for that question. If you recall, in the early goings-on, County Administrator Jim McCafferty referenced the work that the county commissioners had provided in terms of a policy of reduction. We had an early retirement incentive program that allowed us to provide an exit, if you will, for those employees who felt that they could take advantage of that program. We've had attrition, and we've had more than 2,000 of our employees over the last several years leave county employment. We did not fix a number. Those numbers are always being adjusted based on what is put in front of the departments and the agencies relative to new initiatives or cutback in programs. And I think, sir, and I believe you're a council candidate, or not? You are not. That the council candidates and certainly will find that a number, when they look at the budget, a number of those positions are supported by grants or other sources of revenue and not the general fund. So there are times when those the grant funds dry up that those employees leave with the program. Others, they look at if those skill sets are needed elsewhere, then they transfer those individuals to maybe another department or another work unit within the department they were working in. But we don't have a fixed number, but we're about at 8,500 as we speak today. And we know that another 300 or 400 won't handicap our operations. Did that address your question? Okay.
Would you like to add anything? You don't have to.
Our work group's approach, again, was looking at subject matter and various tasks. So as we wrap up our discussions, we'll be looking at, is this current staff adequate to meet the demands that we're going to be looking at for consolidating offices? Will there be sufficient staff? Will there be too many staff? For example, with internal audit, that's a staff that does not exist at all at this point. So we're looking at either finding people who meet those qualifications from within or actually hiring some new people to complete those tasks. So our work group's focus was not so much on simply looking at number of people, but at looking at what needed to be done and how to do it best.
There's a question to the right, Gary.
Hi, I'm Gwen Dillingham. I'm with Ken Lancey's campaign. And I just have a question about the RFP for the county appraisal. Has that been released yet, or are you working on that RFP that you reference in the preliminary recommendations for property valuation?
Thank you, Gwen. The original RFP that I was discussing was one presented to our subcommittee, and it looked at bringing in outside companies for residential, commercial reappraisals, for looking at exempt properties, looking at every property within the county and bidding that out for handling those services. What our subcommittee determined is that it did not make sense to bid out all of those services when the county had a sufficient appraisal department, and all that was needed were, I hate to say it this way, but all that were needed were bodies to conduct some of the work out in the field. So we did develop an RFQ, request for qualifications, for individual appraisers who would apply to do that work within the county. Residential appraisers would be needed beginning of next year, and some of the commercial appraisers would be needed sooner. So there is a request for qualification that's ready to go out. I don't believe it has been put out yet, but that should be happening within the next few weeks to a month, I would imagine. The values need to be effective as of January 1st, 2012, and those values will be certified to the tax commissioner in November of 2012 and appear in the tax bills that go out in December. So the actual work is usually completed by the first half of 2012. Traditionally, the auditor's office has gone out then to the public and allowed property owners to view their property values and make informal complaints if they have any. Whether that process will continue, I don't know, but the date that those values need to be certified is November of 2012.
Gentleman right here.
Please introduce yourself. My name is Nick Nagy, and my question is about the independence of the internal audit function. It might have been covered, but perhaps you can restate it. Is the internal audit going to be appointed by the board? Do they report to the board directly? Are they going to be independent of the county executive?
Okay, your question was not totally answered during my presentation. What I'm looking at is the actual charter and how that views the internal audit committee, and this is one of the few tasks that actually has a whole section regarding internal audit. The internal audit department will report to an internal audit committee who is going to consist of the fiscal officer, the county executive, president of council, and 2 residents that will be appointed by the county executive and confirmed by council. So it will be a 5-person committee who that internal audit department will report to.
That's the charter.
All right. That's yes, that is the charter.
It's not something that you have any control over. There's no recommendation to change that.
To change the charter? No.
Yeah.
At this time, no, and I think once the administrations come into play and the council is seated, if they feel that there is a better way, a more efficient way to do that, when 2012 comes and there's a charter review commission established, that certainly could be put before the voters as a modification, but they cannot tamper with this process. And one thing that you ask about whether or not they would be independent, I think clearly the framers of this segment felt that having the 2 citizens involved with the elected officials, appointed officials, adds weight to that independence component.
Yes, my name is Eric Johnson. I have 2 questions, but just as a piggyback to the question about the internal audit, the question I would have is, are those people going to be voting members? You said that there's going to be the county executive, the fiscal officer, and the president of council, and 2 residents. Are those political members, are they going to be voting members? Because then that significantly impacts the weight of who's going to make decisions in that process. And that was also one of the shortfalls that was noted in the construction of this charter. Secondly, are these recommendations in line with state law regarding proper authorization and fund collection for taxes and fiscal reporting? And number 3, what will be the council powers to amend the 2011 budget?
Okay, we're going to split this answer if I thoroughly understand the question. First, regarding the internal audit, that 5-member committee will be, as far as I understand, the voting members who will appoint the director of that department and set the tone for that internal audit department. I'm not quite sure what else you meant by that question, but does that answer?
What I'm saying is that you have three members, three officials who might have some skin in the game, more or less, who have control of the internal audit process. It would be better served if there were 4 residents and the three people who were in the government. What I'm saying is this process really doesn't address, or that part of the charter really doesn't address a significant amount of accountability. Because if there's a change, I mean, even those people are appointed. So there's just that's just one of the shortfalls in the process, and I think it deserves a close review. And I know we're saying 2012, but there's going to be a significant amount of changes going back and forth between 2011 and 2012. So that's probably something that's beyond a little bit of where we're here.
Okay.
But the other 2 questions I'd like to answer.
Okay, well, I do understand your first point, and I think one thing to point out is the president of county council and the county executive really are 2 separate divisions of the government. So I think when you talk about having skin in the game, they, each are looking at a different viewpoint in setting up that committee. And second point was regarding financial reporting and tax collection being in line with state law. Yes, the charter does require, or the state law does require, that certain tasks be performed in compliance with the law. The county treasurer, per the charter, is required to conduct the statutory duties that are required, as is the fiscal officer is required to conduct the statutory duties of the auditor and the recorder and part of the clerk of courts. So yes, they will be complying with the statute. And the third part, Gary will handle.
Eric, as to whether or not council will be able to amend or completely change the 2011 budget, the simple answer is yes, they will have the authority to do that, granted under the charter. The reality is that there are programs and funding mechanisms in place that extend beyond maybe a month or 2 months. You got expiration dates on certain types of funding, other federal, state requirements, so that the council, if they decide that they wanted to reset the priorities, reallocate the funding cycle and so forth, and also be aware of the requirements under the Health and Human Services levy, which is dedicated pot of money. They can change it, but it's not as easy as coming in, riding the white horse, saying I want to change it and this is the way it should look. The realities of the budgeting process is that it's complex and intricate. There's a lot of integrated funding for many of these programs that have to be considered. You do so at your own peril in some cases. If you decide that you wanted to shift your resources to another area, then you may be doing irreparable damage to a significant program that the citizens want and have been provided for historically by the county commissioners, for instance. So they would be able to make the modifications, but hopefully it'll be a more judicious process than coming in and trying to wipe the slate clean and start all over again.
Next question or comment?
Go ahead. Oh, thank you. My name is Paul Ellis. Really a 2-part question. One is, I know that some of the committees in Finance and Administration have been very active just by the nature of their charge, and others have been more circumscribed by state law because there are certain functions that are required. First part is do you have some expectations as far as work product down to the nitty-gritty, or more of an overview view? And then secondly, the role of PFM as far as what they're expected to do, and are they going to you expect them to make specific recommendations and then create a timeline on when those recommendations will be implemented or not implemented based upon how they fit overall in the structure?
As far as the work products, you know, we will be putting those together within the next, well, we have to have them done by September 3rd, so within the next month. We are looking at a total range of general recommendations down to specific recommendations such as move this department from here to there, so it's more, the document flow is much smoother and much easier for the taxpayer. So we will have both specific and general recommendations. Probably the key point is getting that organizational structure recommended and how the different activities will fall under that structure and what's going to be needed to get those moving when the new government comes in. As far as PFM, so far for our committee, they've done a lot of research for us. They've brought in budgets from, you know, budget information from numerous counties and cities. They brought in organizational structures. They brought in financial reports. So at this point, they've been doing a lot of research for us. We believe that as we move on, they're going to help us to organize our deliverables, and Gary can speak to what they're looking at for the rest of the work groups.
And Paul, and acknowledge in front of this audience, thank you for your participation in the work groups, and been in multiple subcommittees, and you seem to be there because of not only your interest, but because you have subject matter expertise as well. So thank you for your service. PFM is going to be playing a dual role. The executive committee will be using them across the board for all the work groups to do, as Robin indicated, organize recommendations, bring some uniformity of reporting to the executive committee, which of course garbage in, garbage out. If they don't do it right, then the TAG will have to go back and try to reorganize. But they will resist, I think, making recommendations unless it really follows the mandates of these work groups, the recommendations of these work groups. The second part of PFM's responsibility, and this was authorized just this past Thursday at the Board of County Commissioners meeting, is that we have engaged them to take us beyond the transition period from November the 3rd to January 1st, making certain that, again, to ensure that seamlessness, to focus on those recommendations, help us with the transition group that is maybe put together by the county executive and or county council, and then also kind of sort out and help us prioritize what should we present first, what's important. It seems to me that this kind of work is a body of work that we need to bring quickly forward. How we do that, and the folks who have the experience of working with other governments throughout the country that have done this will be able to give us advice. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean we'll take it, but it does mean that it gives us some options and a wide array of way we can present that to the county council and the new executive. So they'll play a dual role, working with the work groups and helping them bring forward the recommendations, and then also with the Transition Advisory Group, the TAG, to help us perfect those recommendations, put them in a fashion that makes sense for us to present to the 12 elected officials. Does that respond to your question there?
Thank you, Paul. I think Ray was trying to get in next. Sorry. Oh, you're fine. I'll bring the mic.
Yes, my name is Ray Rosenberger, and I was looking at the Board of Revision slide that you had up on the screen, and I'm not entirely clear on this appointment process because I lack the detail of exactly the Board of Revision and what processes they perform. Where does the citizens, voters of Cuyahoga County who are not aligned with a political party, where do they fall in the appointment process?
Currently, the Board of Revision is made up of the county treasurer, the county auditor, and one of the county commissioners, normally the president of the county commissioners. And their task is to review value complaints from citizens within the county. Now, those three individuals obviously cannot review the tens of thousands of complaints that come in, so they have appointed a number of boards. routinely 3 separate boards. We've been up to 5 boards where each of those individuals appoints their representative. Under the new county charter, the appointment of those individuals, as I said, is 1 from the county executive and then 2 from the county council, and the charter does require that they be of opposite political parties. So as far as individuals who are not associated with one of those parties, they could be appointed by the county executive, or that may be another issue to look at as in 2012 as the charter maybe, you know, recommendations are made for amendments. Is that sufficient? Okay.
There's a question over to the mayor.
Ron Finnerty, I'm running for District 8. You just raised a red flag in my head. You said that the executive appoints the 2 people. The party, when he asked about the individuals being from different parties, and he was actually concerned with Democrat, Republican, which is why the law was written that way, but it sidelines anybody that's independent. But you said that the county exec names them or appoints them. You just said that. It worries me when you tell me that becomes the whole thing is appointed by the exec then.
Let her clarify what she said.
If I misspoke, I'm sorry. And I believe this was shown on the slide I had earlier, the county executive will appoint 1 member of the Board of Revision. The county council, president of the county council, will appoint 2 members. So there will be a total of 3 members, and the county council's members must be of different political parties. There's no political requirement for the appointee of the county executive. But there are 3 members that will serve on each of however many boards or hearing boards that they determine are necessary. But is that what? Okay, and that's stated in the charter.
Yeah, my name's Doug Cooper. I'm involved with the Board of Revision Work Group, and as a point of clarification on Robin's clarification, I wanted to point out that Section 602 of the Charter, which talks about the Board of Revision and how it's appointed, it states that on the part, those 2 members that are appointed by council, it says 2 members of each board who shall not be of the same political party will be appointed by the council. So that doesn't mean you have to be in a political party to be appointed by council. You simply can't have 2 members of the Green Party or whatever appointed by council. They have to be different. So party affiliation may or may not come into play in the council as it appoints its members to the boards.
There's a question, Linda.
Hello, I'm Linda Barley. I do not have a background in financial affairs. So for those of us who are neophytes, can you please explain the difference between how you envision the county treasurer's duties and the fiscal officer's duties? And are there state laws that prevent the 2 from being one and the same person?
Per the ORC, and this will continue on through the new government, the county auditor, who is now going to be part of the fiscal or will be the fiscal officer, is responsible for assessing taxes. Okay, the county treasurer is responsible for the collection of taxes. So there will be that separation. There, as far as reporting, you know, the county treasurer is the one who's physically taking in the money. The county auditor is doing the accounting. They're the ones who issue the warrants or the checks. So the treasurer is more on the revenue side, the auditor is more on the disbursement side. So there will need to be a separation between those offices. Okay. And the other function of the county treasurer is the investment portfolio, okay, which the auditor's office does not have a role in the investment of the monies, but they would do much of the the tracking of the funds. Does that answer everything? Okay.
And Linda, if I may, at the risk of telling you something you already know, the charter does provide for basically home rule. And so the fiscal officer is sort of the super administrator over all financial matters. And if the council and executive adopt the recommendations coming out of this work group, that all financial issues and concerns come under the fiscal officer, then it would be that the treasurers and the revenue side would fall under that structure. The tax collection side would fall under that structure. Anything having to do, and perhaps the budget office, if OBM stays in place, would come under that officer. Things that Robin had outlined. So there's a superstructure, if you will. One person is going to be accountable for all of that, and he or she has an awesome responsibility, but it would have to be in compliance with the charter and also state laws.
Thank you both. Any other questions? We certainly can open up a second round of questions for those of you that have spoken, but I want to make sure that any of you that haven't spoken be afforded that opportunity. Anyone else? Okay, how about a second round of questions then? Ray was quick at the draw there.
This is a follow-up to this independent question. If an independent candidate not aligned with any political party is elected to one of the districts, and the charter reads that they be of two different political parties, does that preclude the independent who does not belong to a political party from being appointed?
Sir, I think the answer to that is unknown. It's a question that either the law director or the county prosecutor would have to clarify. The assumption is that an independent would have a role in not only the councilmanic functions, serving on committees and so forth, but if the charter is silent, then clearly they will. Where it specifies that they be of political parties, and we enjoy, if you will call it that, a two-party system, or the other parties that are sanctioned by the state, then we would have to basically bow to the wording and the authority invested in the charter. But I think the legal question has to be addressed by either the law director or the county prosecutor. Very good question.
Other questions? Comments? Here we are. Frank?
Again, Frank Scala. And in your reviewing of the finance and administration process, did any of the groups look at the county's contracting process and the difficulty of responding to a very large request for proposal? At the present time, the county's doing a great job of issuing requests for proposals and being and trying to be fair so that everybody has a chance to respond. But at the same time, the contract requirements have just gotten very extensive, and are probably quite burdensome to small agencies and companies that are responding. So is that something that you looked at? I mean, I know it's a small part of the whole process, but it does come into play in terms of the region's economy and how people can participate in providing county services. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I know you were directing that question to me. Actually, the purchasing process is being handled by another work group. So I'm going to hand this over to Gary.
The Office of Diversity and Procurement is going to be replaced by Department of Purchasing and the Purchasing Director. In the work group process, and I made short shrift of it when I showed the organizational chart, but there is a work group that's looking at purchasing practices, contracting practices, how to make that more efficient, and whether or not there has to be injected a greater level of fairness in the process. Also turning that around very quickly when we have that contracting process. I'm not a member of that organization, so I'm not quite certain, you know, the length of time, but generally on RFPs, requests for proposals, it takes anywhere from 2 to 4 months to get something in front of the commissioners. That is something that the work group has been looking at and expects to shorten so that we can keep a more efficient process in place. But yes, they are addressing that issue, and you'll see recommendations pertaining to that.
Mary Dennehan with Public Engagement. If you want to see the recommendations, come to the forum on August 10th. That's when procurement will be reporting, and that is going to be at Mount Sinai Baptist Church at 79th and Woodland at 6:30 in the evening. So that's when they're going to be presenting their findings so far.
Questions, comments? I think that maybe some gardening responsibilities might be calling, so you all are going to be moving on your way. Just as we wind down, I would ask you to keep in mind that we will take this information back for further refinement by the work groups. I think these were excellent questions. Certainly gives me a lot to think about as an executive committee member. You know, we will be vetting all of this information from September through November. So whenever I hear these good questions, it gives me ammunition to go even before the executive committee and ask for further clarification. We will continue to post our meetings and our forums. You can go back and watch this one on the county website and others. I think it's James that I met coming in mentioned that he had watched one of these forums online and was familiar with some of what we're doing, so that's always exciting to see. We would certainly ask you to complete the feedback form that we talked about earlier. You'll see to the right we have special help flown in today. The very high price, I might add. But please, that's right. Gary said you have no idea. But we would ask you to simply drop your exit surveys in those boxes that those young ladies are holding on the way out. It really is critical that we get as much feedback as possible. It really is helpful. And I would encourage you to stay apprised of what we're trying to do here, and you can do that by visiting charter at cuyahogacounty.us. As involved as I am, I visit that website just to stay abreast because there's so much great information. There's so many great committee reports, and you can see meeting minutes, you can watch videos. I mean, it's just a wealth of information that the county has done a great job with. So we would encourage you to remain apprised. As you see from the last bullet, your ongoing engagement is critical. We don't shy away from these questions. Our committees, our TAG, our executive committee, we all want to hear questions, we want to hear comments, we want to hear feedback. If we weren't sincere about that, we wouldn't be hosting these in the first place. So I want to thank again Robin and Gary. Let's give them a round of applause for excellent presentation. As you can tell from their work, this hasn't been very easy, but I know they're both working extremely hard, and on behalf of all of us, we thank you for that. And I finally want to thank you all for giving up Saturday morning to come and learn more about this process, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend and stay in touch. We hope to see you soon. Thank you.